My name is Layla. Before I tell you how everything in our family shattered, you need to know my sister. Her name was Hannah. Hannah wasn't just my sister. She was the golden one, the one everyone looked up to, the one whose laughter seemed to make even the heaviest hearts lighter. She was elegance. She was kindness. She was brilliance. When she walked into a room, heads turned, not because she demanded it, but because her presence radiated something rare. I always admired her. Sometimes I envied her too, but mostly I adored her. She was the kind of person people wrote stories about, the kind of person who seemed untouchable. And then she met Daniel. Daniel was handsome, yes, but more than handsome, magnetic. He had that charm that drew people in, that warmth that made strangers feel like friends. He remembered names. He shook hands firmly. He looked people in the eye when he spoke. And when he looked at Hannah, he looked at her like she was the only woman in existence. When he proposed, it felt like the whole family won a prize. Joseph, our father, nodded approvingly. "This is the kind of man who will protect our Hannah," he said with pride. Miriam, our mother, wiped away tears, whispering, "I see the way he loves her. It's true. It's real." Their wedding was a dream. Hannah in lace, walking down the aisle with sunlight streaming through stained glass. Daniel waiting at the altar, tears glistening in his eyes. The entire family applauded, clapped, cheered. I remember glancing at Clara that day, our cousin, in her pale green bridesmaid's dress. She smiled, yes, but her eyes, they weren't joyful. They were calculating. If I had looked closer, I would have seen it. That hunger. That quiet vow forming inside her. If I can't be Hannah, then I'll take what she has. But I didn't see it then. None of us did. We believed in the fairy tale. And fairy tales always blind you to the shadows. Clara's envy didn't start with Daniel. It started long before. It started when we were children. Summers at our grandparents' farm were filled with races across fields, games under the oak tree, endless laughter. But not all laughter was equal. At the family picnic, Hannah and I tied our legs together for the three-legged race. We stumbled, we laughed, we pushed each other forward, and we won. Everyone cheered, clapping as we collapsed into the grass out of breath. "Look at those girls go," the uncles laughed. The aunts ruffled our hair with pride. Clara, she stood at the edge, her fists balled, her face burning. "She always wins," she muttered bitterly, her voice sharp for someone so young. Hannah reached for her hand, smiling softly. "It's okay, Clara. We'll run together next time." But Clara snatched her hand away. She didn't want comfort. She wanted to be the star. At birthdays, Hannah played piano. Her fingers danced across the keys, filling the room with melody. The applause rippled across the family. Then Clara would slam onto the keys afterwards, loud, messy, chaotic. Her face twisted with frustration when no one clapped. At holidays, Hannah wore dresses our grandmother sewed. Compliments poured in. Clara tugged at her hem, sulking in silence. Always second. Always overlooked. And envy is not something children grow out of. It grows with them. Ferments, soars. By adulthood, that envy was no longer childish. It was poison. When Hannah went to university, Clara stumbled from job to job. When Hannah got engaged, the family celebrated for weeks. Clara brought a date once to a reunion. He left halfway through the evening, uninterested. At one dinner, Uncle George, Clara's father, laughed. "Hannah was always destined for something good." Clara, maybe one day you'll bring home a man like Daniel. Clara's smile was tight, brittle. Oh, don't worry, Uncle. Maybe sooner than you think. Her eyes slid towards Daniel. It was subtle, quick, almost unnoticeable. But I noticed, and my stomach tightened. Later that night, I found Clara in the kitchen. She was stacking plates, her smile too sweet. You know, Hannah is very lucky. Daniel treats her like a queen. I nodded. He does. They're good together. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Sometimes I wonder, she said softly. Wonder what? I asked. Her gaze sharpened. Wonder if people like Hannah even know how good they have it, or if they just take it for granted. Her tone cut like a knife. I forced a laugh, brushing it off, but Eunice lodged in my chest. Our father Joseph once said quietly to me as we sat on the porch, "She's jealous, Layla. Always has been. And Daniel, he doesn't push her away." I wanted to deny it. I wanted to believe Hannah's world was safe. But deep down, I knew he was right. And that truth scared me. Clara carried her envy like a second skin. It showed at every family gathering. Hannah would be praised for her cooking, her home, her career. Clara would force a laugh, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Hannah would glow beside Daniel. Clara would watch with narrowed eyes, her jaw tight. At one Sunday lunch, Aunt Ruth bragged loudly. "My Clara is independent. She doesn't need a man to define her." Clara smiled faintly, sipping her wine, but I saw her eyes drift to Hannah's wedding ring. Her gaze lingered, heavy, longing. She didn't want independence. She didn't want her own path. She wanted Hannah's. Her life, her husband, her happiness. And Hannah? She never noticed. She adored Clara. She trusted her completely. She treated her like a sister. When Clara visited, Hannah welcomed her warmly. When Clara lingered too long, Hannah thought nothing of it. Because Hannah lived with love in her heart, and people with love in their hearts rarely see betrayal coming. The first crack came at that summer barbecue. The night I walked into the kitchen and saw Daniel's hand on Clara's waist. The night they pulled apart too quickly, laughing nervously. The night Clara said, "Oh, Layla, we were just talking about pie. You know how I can never get it right." But I knew better. That was not pie. That was poison. And it had already begun to spread. It was one of those evenings when Hannah and Daniel hosted the whole family for a barbecue. The garden glowed with lanterns strung across the fence. Children ran barefoot in the grass, shrieking with laughter. Music played softly from a speaker, blending with the smell of roasted meat. I was carrying plates into the kitchen when I froze. Daniel stood too close to Clara. His hand rested lightly on her waist. Their heads were bent together, whispering, smiling. It wasn't family closeness. It was something else. When they noticed me, they jumped apart instantly. Clara laughed nervously, her voice too high. "Oh, Layla, we were just talking about Hannah's pie recipe. You know how I can never get it right." Daniel nodded quickly, reaching for a drink as if nothing had happened. My chest tightened. I wanted to shout, to demand answers. But Hannah's laughter floated in from the garden, warm and trusting. I bit my tongue. I walked past them, gripping the tray so hard my knuckles whitened. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Was I imagining it? Was I reading too much into a careless touch? But my gut screamed otherwise. The days after, I noticed everything. Clara started showing up more often at Hannah's house. She brought wine, flowers, excuses to stay late. Her laughter at Daniel's jokes was too loud. Her touches lingered too long. And Daniel, he didn't pull away. One afternoon, I walked into the living room. Clara leaned over Daniel, showing him something on her phone. Their shoulders touched, their heads bent close. They flinched when they saw me. Clara slipped her phone back quickly, smiling wide. "Oh, just showing him some pictures from work." But my stomach twisted. At a family dinner, Clara served Daniel first. Her hand brushed his, lingering deliberately. Hannah beamed. "Clara, you're so thoughtful, always looking out for everyone." Clara smiled back sweetly, her eyes sharp when they met mine. It wasn't innocence. It was provocation. I wanted to scream, but Hannah's face, so trusting, so happy, stopped me every time. So I stayed silent, and that silence burned inside me like acid. The cracks widened quickly. Daniel began working late more often, or so he said. "Just another project," he explained, loosening his tie, avoiding Hannah's eyes. She believed him every time, but I wouldn't. Hannah appeared even more often. She lounged on Hannah's couch, sipped Hannah's wine, smiled too brightly at Hannah's jokes. But when Hannah left the room, Clara's eyes locked onto Daniel, sharp, hungry. One evening, as Hannah bustled in the kitchen, I stood near the window. Outside, under the dim porch light, Daniel was on the phone. His voice was low, urgent. "Yes, I'll see you later. Just be patient." I strained to hear, my breath shallow. A pause. Then his voice again. "No, not tonight. Hannah suspects nothing. Just wait." The name on his lips wasn't clear, but my gut knew. Clara. Another night, I followed her. She left Hannah's house late, smiling as she climbed into her car. I trailed her at a distance. Her car wound through the quiet streets, stopping at a hotel on the edge of town. She glanced around nervously, then walked inside. Minutes later, Daniel's car pulled in. He hurried through the lobby doors, his tie loosened, his face tense. Hours later, they emerged. Clara's lipstick was smeared. Daniel's shirt was rumpled. The sight made bile rise in my throat. It was real. The betrayal wasn't suspicion anymore. It was fact. I wanted to rush to Hannah, to tear the mask off their faces, but I couldn't. Not yet. Her laughter that morning still echoed in my mind. She had kissed Daniel goodbye, told him to work hard. She trusted him completely, and if I ripped that trust away too soon, I feared it would shatter her. So I carried the truth alone, and it ate at me, day after day. The shadows became darker. Daniel's excuses piled up. Overtime, traffic, client meetings. Clara's visits became more brazen. She wore new dresses. Her perfume lingered in the hallways. At one Sunday dinner, she leaned across Daniel to pass the salt. Her hand grazed his arm, lingering too long. Hannah noticed nothing. She smiled warmly. "Clara, you're such a help." But I noticed. I noticed everything. One night, I overheard Clara in the garden, her voice low, fierce. "Daniel, you promised. You said you'd leave her." His voice crackled faintly through the phone. "I will. I just need time. Hannah doesn't deserve to be blindsided. Clara's laugh was sharp. Doesn't deserve it. She's had everything her whole life. It's my turn, and I won't wait forever. Her tone shifted, dangerous. If you don't leave her soon, I'll tell her myself. I stumbled back from the window, my heart pounding. It wasn't just an affair, it was war, and Clara was ready to burn the family to get what she wanted. The next evening, I caught them again. The study door was half open. Inside, Clara stood close to Daniel, their voices tense. "You're mine," she hissed, gripping his arm. "Don't forget that." Daniel's voice cracked. "Clara, not here, not now. Hannah could walk in any second." Clara smirked, brushing her hand down his chest. "Then when? How long will you pretend?" For a moment, his eyes lifted and locked with mine in the doorway. His face went pale. I stepped back quickly, my chest heaving. Clara swept out moments later, her perfume choking the air, her lips curling into a sly smile as she brushed past me. I wanted to drag Hannah downstairs right then to show her the truth. But my throat closed, my courage failed, and the secret continued to grow. Daniel was unraveling. The confident man we once admired was now restless, twitching, hollow. At dares, he laughed too loudly, his eyes darting nervously whenever Clara was in the room. When Hannah touched his arm, he flinched as if her love burned him. At night, his phone buzzed constantly. He slipped outside to answer, pacing the garden with a cigarette. I listened from the window. "Clara, you have to stop pushing me," he whispered harshly. "Hannah, she doesn't deserve this." Clara's muffled reply was sharp. "She doesn't deserve you. I do. You told me I make you feel alive, remember?" Daniel pressed his hand against his forehead. "This is tearing me apart." Her voice dropped low, almost mocking. "Then stop tearing and choose me, or I'll make the choice for you." His shoulders slumped. He didn't argue. I watched him deteriorate week by week. His hair was messier, his shirts rumpled. Dark circles bloomed under his eyes. Clara, meanwhile, only grew bolder. She brushed his shoulder openly in front of the family. She leaned close when Hannah wasn't looking, her lips curling into private smirks. And Daniel never stopped her. He was too weak. One evening, Miriam and I were preparing dessert in the kitchen. Through the crack in the doorway, I saw Clara lean toward Daniel, her hand on his thigh beneath the table. His jaw tightened, his breath shallow. And yet, he didn't move her hand. I dropped the spoon I was holding, the clatter echoing in the kitchen. When I stepped out, Clara's hand was gone, but her smirk remained. Daniel was torn between guilt and desire, and in his weakness, he fed Clara's hunger. He was the match, she was the flame, and together they were ready to ignite the fire that would consume us all. The annual family reunion was Hannah's favorite event of the year. She threw herself into preparations with the joy of a child decorating for Christmas. She strung fairy lights across the garden fence. She polished silverware until it gleamed. She tested recipes for days, filling the kitchen with aromas of roasting meats and fresh bread. Her laughter echoed through the house as she hummed and danced between rooms. "This year will be perfect," she told me, her eyes sparkling. "Everyone together again. Daniel has been such a help." I forced a smile, my heart aching. Because Daniel wasn't helping. He was suffocating under guilt. And Clara, she was smug. She waltzed into Hannah's house one afternoon, inspecting the decorations like a queen surveying her throne. When Hannah showed her the seating chart, Clara leaned in, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Oh, look, I'm sitting right across from Daniel. Perfect." She winked at him when Hannah turned her back. His jaw tightened, his eyes darting away. But he said nothing, and my stomach churned. That evening, I stood by the window. Daniel was outside again, phone pressed to his ear, voice low. "Yes, Clara, just a little longer, please. Not before the reunion. She deserves at least that much." His words made me sick. He wasn't protecting Hannah. He was protecting himself, buying time, delaying the inevitable. And Clara wouldn't wait forever. 2 nights before the reunion, I caught them again in the study, the door half open, whispers spilling out. "You're mine," Clara hissed. "Don't forget it." Daniel rubbed his temple, exhausted. "Clara, stop. This is insane. She's your cousin." Clara smirked, leaning close. "She's my rival, and soon she'll be nothing." Her words sliced through the air like glass. Daniel looked up, his eyes locking with mine in the doorway. He froze. I froze. The silence between us was deafening. Clara swept past me moments later, her perfume heavy, her smirk victorious. That night, lying awake, I made a decision. I could not carry this secret any longer. At the reunion, in front of everyone, I would end it. Not in whispers, not in private, but in truth. The kind of truth that leaves no room for denial. The kind of truth that explodes.
The night of the reunion arrived. The house glowed like something out of a dream. Fairy lights twinkled across the garden. Candles flickered on every table. Platters of food filled the air with rich aromas. Guests began to arrive, their laughter spilling into the night. Aunts hugged Hannah tightly, showering her with compliments. "You've outdone yourself again," Aunt Layla said warmly. Uncles clapped Daniel on the back. "You're a lucky man," George chuckled. "Not everyone has a wife like Hannah." Daniel forced a smile, his jaw tight. His eyes flicked nervously toward Clara. And Clara? She arrived fashionably late. Her emerald dress shimmered under the lights. Her lips gleamed scarlet. Her smile was sweet, but her eyes were fire. She kissed Hannah's cheek, cooing, "Darling, everything looks perfect." But as Hannah turned to greet another guest, Clara's gaze shifted to Daniel. A glance, a spark, a silent claim. "You are mine." Daniel looked away instantly, but I saw the tremor in his hands. The family gathered in the dining room. The long table stretched under the chandelier's glow, piled high with food. Glasses of wine sparkled. Laughter filled the air. Grandfather Elias rose slowly, leaning on his cane. His voice carried warmth and weight. To Hannah and Daniel, a couple who remind us all of what love and loyalty look like. The family clapped. Hannah's eyes shone with tears, touched by the words. She squeezed Daniel's hand under the table. He flinched. But she didn't notice. Clara smirked, her eyes gleaming as she sipped her wine. I sat in silence, my heart pounding. The evidence burned in my pocket. Photos, receipts, messages. The truth waited at the edge of my tongue. And as the laughter rang around me, I knew. Before the night ended, everything would break. The chandelier glowed overhead. The food glistened on the table, steaming bowls and golden bread rolls untouched for a moment. Grandfather Elias's toast hung in the air like smoke. Everyone clinked glasses. Everyone smiled. But I couldn't, because, across from me, Clara leaned back in her chair. Her hand slid under the table. Her fingers brushed Daniel's knee. He stiffened, but he didn't move her hand away. That was it. The moment I couldn't stay silent any longer. My chair scraped loudly across the floor. I stood. The sound cut through the laughter like a blade. Everyone turned. Forks froze in midair. Wine glasses paused at lips. Hannah frowned, confused. "Layla, what's wrong?" My throat tightened, but the words burst out. "I can't keep this secret anymore." A hush fell. Dozens of eyes locked onto me. I turned to Hannah, my sister, my golden sister. "Daniel and Clara have been betraying you." Gasps erupted. Miriam's hand flew to her mouth. Joseph's fist slammed the table so hard the dishes rattled. Uncle George leapt to his feet, his face red. "How dare you? Lies! You dare slander my daughter in this house?" But I didn't flinch. I pulled my phone from my pocket and laid it on the table. One by one, the photos flashed on screen. Daniel and Clara entering hotels. Receipts. Messages. The room went silent. All eyes shifted to Hannah. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. "You?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Her eyes darted from Daniel to Clara. Clara smirked, her voice sweet but venomous. "Fine. Yes. Because he loves me, not her." Chaos erupted. Aunt Ruth sobbed into her hands. Joseph roared, "You betrayed your cousin, your family, your own blood." Miriam wrapped her arms around Hannah, whispering frantically. Daniel stammered, "Hannah, please, it wasn't supposed to." "Not supposed to?" Hannah screamed. "You promised me forever. You vowed in front of this family." Clara stood, her chair screeching. "Forever?" she spat. "You were just the safe choice, the boring one. I gave him passion. I gave him life." Uncle George grabbed her arm. "Shut your mouth. You've shamed us enough." But Clara yanked free, eyes blazing. "I don't regret it, not for a second." The children cried, the elders shouted, the house shook with the weight of betrayal. Grandfather Elias banged his cane. "Enough." The voices fell silent. His face was pale, but his voice thundered. "You have shamed us before God and family. Get out." Hannah's voice broke through, trembling but strong. "Yes, get out, both of you." Daniel reached across the table desperately. "Hannah, please." She jerked her hand back. "There is no Hannah and Daniel. Not anymore." Her words cracked like thunder. Daniel's shoulders slumped. Clara's smirk faltered. Together they stumbled out the door. The slam echoed through the house. And Hannah collapsed against Miriam, her sobs tearing the night apart. The house was a graveyard of silence. The food sat cold on the table, untouched. Candles guttered low, wax dripping onto the cloth. The fairy lights outside still glowed, mocking the darkness within. No one spoke for a long time. Then whispers began. Aunt Layla hissed, "I warned you about Clara, George. Always spoiled, always jealous." George sat stiff, his fists clenched. "She's no daughter of mine," he muttered hoarsely. Ruth sobbed, clutching her shawl. "My Clara! How could she do this?" Joseph slammed his palm on the table. "She nearly destroyed my child. Don't ask me for pity." Arguments flared, accusations flew. Even the cousins whispered nervously, their young voices trembling. But through it all, Hannah sat silent. Her eyes were hollow. Her hands twisted her wedding ring round and round until her skin was raw. Finally, she whispered, barely audible, "Was it all a lie?
Miriam knelt beside her, cradling her like a child. No, darling, you loved truly. Their betrayal doesn't erase your love. But Hannah shook her head slowly. Her tears fell onto the table like rain. Later, when the guests drifted away, the house was left in ruin. Empty glasses, crumpled napkins, the echo of shouts still hanging in the air. Joseph sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Miriam paced, muttering, "What will people say? What will they think of Hannah?" George looked up sharply. "They'll think nothing. She has nothing to be ashamed of. Daniel and Clara carry the shame." Upstairs, I found Hannah still in her dress, curled on her bed. Her makeup was smeared across the pillow. Her eyes were swollen. She turned to me slowly. "Layla, did you know?" The question cut deep. My lips trembled. I suspected. I saw things. I couldn't bring myself to tell you." Her voice broke. "So I was the last fool in the room?" Her words stabbed my chest. I reached for her hand. "I thought I was protecting you, but I only made it worse." She didn't squeeze my hand back, but she didn't pull away either, and that was enough to keep me breathing. The days that followed were a blur. Word spread quickly. Cousins, aunts, friends, everyone whispered. Hannah became the center of pity. Daniel became a pariah. Clara became poison. Ruth refused to answer Clara's calls. George forbade her name from being spoken in his house. She was disowned. Clara raged. She sent furious messages to family chats. "You've all turned your backs on me. Hannah stole everything from me my whole life. Daniel was mine." George removed her from the chat, and silence swallowed her. Daniel tried to beg. He arrived at Hannah's door with flowers. He fell to his knees. "Hannah, please, don't take yourself away from me too. I can't breathe without you." Hannah took the flowers, walked to the trash bin, and dropped them inside. Her voice was ice. "You already lost me the night you touched her." She shut the door in his face. Clara tried to. One night, she stood in the rain outside Miriam's house, her makeup running, her voice desperate. "Auntie, please, I made mistakes, but I'm still family." Miriam's voice shook. "No, Clara, you knew what you were doing, and you did it anyway." George's voice thundered from behind her. "Leave. Don't ever return." The door slammed, and Clara disappeared into the storm.
Thank you for being here.
Meanwhile,
Thank you for
Hannah
traveling this
slowly
unfamiliar
rose from
path
the
with me.
ashes.
Together
She
we
boxed
inspire each
Daniel's
other.
belongings, her hands trembling
Beautiful
at first,
has a
then
language.
faster, angrier, until the boxes
you
were
hear it?
gone. She returned to gardening,
see it?
her hands in the soil, her
Take
face
more time to
softening
do
with
it.
each bloom.
Look
She baked again,
for
filling the
beautiful
house
that
with
surrounds
sweet
your life
smells.
today,
She
and those
laughed
you
again,
know,
hesitant at
and in the
first,
things
then
that surround
stronger.
you.
She wore bold colors
Until
Daniel
next
once said
time,
he disliked.
thank you for
She
being
wore
here.
them proudly. One evening, she looked in the mirror before going out with friends. Her crimson dress hugged her figure. Her eyes sparkled. She whispered to herself, "I am not broken. I am free." And for the first time, she believed it. Months later, at the next family gathering, Hannah walked in radiant. Her laughter rang true. Her smile lit the room. Every eye turned to her, not with pity, but with admiration. Clara was gone, Daniel was forgotten, but Hannah remained. Stronger, fiercer, untouchable. And as I watched her, I thought back to the night of the explosion, the betrayal, the chaos, the pain. And I realized something. Betrayal may destroy, but truth heals. And karma? Karma never misses.